Hi, I'm Candy Purdom. Thank you for watching Authors Revealed. Today we're speaking to Pete Souza, author of Obama, An Intimate Portrait. Welcome, Pete. We're so happy to have you here with your beautiful new book.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And so let's just start out by asking, when did you become a photographer?
Well, that's a loaded question. I took a photography class my junior year of college at Boston University, and that's as soon as I took that class, I knew that's what I wanted to do. But it took me about like 5 years before I was any good.
Mm-hmm. And so what kinds of subjects did you shoot when you were in college?
In college, whatever the assignments that the professor gave us. So I took 3 photography classes the last 2 years. And then the last semester, I interned for the Associated Press. It was covering news and sports and whatever they had me shoot.
Mm-hmm. And when did you come up with pursuing this dream job of working at the White House?
It was one of those things that just sort of fell in my lap. Almost. I was working for the Chicago Tribune, based in their Washington bureau, and was there when Senator Barack Obama was elected in 2004. So when he came to Washington in January, the following January of 2005, we decided at the Tribune to kind of follow him his first year in the Senate and do a series of stories with photos, and I got to know him pretty well. We did one foreign trip with him that first year in 2005, and then went to Africa with him in 2006. And just being around him and being in his presence, I got to know him. He got to know me. Saw how I worked. So we had developed a professional relationship. And skip ahead 4 years, he's elected to the presidency and asked me to become his White House photographer. So just kind of being in the right place at the right time.
Having a lot of talent.
Yeah, well, yeah, but sort of connecting with him in a way that he felt comfortable enough with me to ask me to do this job.
Well, he certainly must have felt comfortable, because I understand you took over 2 million photos.
Just under 2 million, so 1.9. Wow. I don't think I ever made it to the 2 million mark. We never actually counted, but with like a month ago, I was at like 1.9. So wow. That's what I say. I don't know the exact number, but a lot of pictures.
A lot of pictures. So how in the world did you go through those pictures to come up with the beautiful ones that you include in your book?
Well, the core pictures that are in the book are ones that we had made public during his presidency, so they were kind of already pre-selected. Of course, there were, a couple thousand, maybe more of those, and I had to still cull those down to a little over 300. And then there were a few others that hadn't been made public for one reason or another, and some of those I included too.
Now, are there favorite spots in the White House that you particularly like to shoot pictures? Maybe the light is the right light, or some special spot in the White House that you like to capture your images?
Well, I mean, the Oval Office is an interesting room, because there's a lot of windows, and depending on the time of the year, the light in there was always different. In the winter, the sun was lower, so you'd get these brilliant rays of sunshine filtering through the windows when there was no leaves on the trees. And then it was more subdued during the summer when the sun was higher and the sunlight wasn't coming directly in. So it was more like open shade kind of lighting. So that was probably my favorite room. I mean, the Rose Garden was for doing like iPhone square photos, scenic photos of the beauty of the rose garden was because that changed throughout the months, where sometimes there'd be roses, sometimes there'd be mums, sometimes there'd be tulips. So I kind of had fun just as playing with my iPhone a lot in the rose garden in between meetings and stuff like that.
Now, you were Reagan's photographer as well.
I was not the chief photographer for Reagan. I was working under Michael Levins, who was the chief photographer. But that was sort of a good training ground for being in the White House, and especially coming back, like 25 years later,
right,
to become the chief photographer for President Obama. I knew how the place worked. I knew the rooms. I had been around, powerful people, so it was somewhat of a seamless transition for me to go back into the White House.
How about the technological changes, though, between the two eras of being in the
Well,
White
during
House?
the Reagan administration, we shot film and had to get the film developed. There was a Navy lab, a U.S. Navy had a photo lab that all our film went to and was processed, and then we'd get the proof sheets, and then if there was one we wanted to select, they would make a print for us. So that took quite a while. And during the Obama administration, we were 100% digital. So every single picture was taken with a digital camera. And so we shot on raw files. So these are huge files. And one of the challenges was transferring all those files to the National Archives at the end of his administration, because it took up so much storage space.
What's the relationship between the White House official photographer and the press photographers? How does that work?
Well, I mean, there's no set relationship in the sense that the people that wrangle, if you will, the press photographers is the White House press office. It's not the White House photographer. The White House photographer's primary function is to document the president for history, and not, I didn't have any say in what the press photographers did. That was the press office.
Just totally separate.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you describe how that job works as being the White House photographer? I mean, are you on call? Is there a set schedule? Is it sort of both? How does it? Do you live in the Oval Office, or?
No, I sometimes I feel like I did, but I didn't live there. No, I mean, essentially the president's schedule was my schedule. So if he, plus I had a longer commute than he did. His commute was only 30 seconds or maybe a minute, and mine was a little longer than that. So, and I also was the head of my office, and I had people working under me, so I had administrative duties.
How big is the staff?
I had three photographers that worked with me. We covered the First Lady, the Vice President, and we would double and triple team big, huge events, outdoor events or on the road. When we were to go on a trip, one of the other photographers would come with me just to supplement. I was mostly doing the behind-the-scenes stuff, and the other photographer was mostly doing the public, the public view. And so I would get to the White House usually around 8 o'clock in the morning to try to get some stuff done at my office, in my little cubbyhole office, which was just below the Oval Office. And then the president would usually walk over around 9:30 to start his day, and that's when I would go upstairs to the Oval Office, and I'd just basically tag along with him the rest of the day. And the only other time, my office was pretty much empty all day. Nobody was in it. I would come down there for, like a 10 minutes for lunch and eat lunch at my desk, and then go back upstairs. And I was there till, he went home in the evening. And then I might come back to my office and do some, more administrative work. So I'd usually, the earliest I probably ever went home was like 7:30, and sometimes it was 8, sometimes 8:30. So it was a long day.
Just depending on what was going on.
Yeah.
Well, for our viewers, who get to the White House on occasion, on a tour and that sort of thing, you've worked at the White House all these years. What would surprise our average viewers about some little secret in the White House that you were surprised about?
I don't know that I was surprised about any secrets. I guess, people forget that the White House is a national park. It's the grounds of the White House, and the White House itself is under the jurisdiction of the national park in terms of the grounds and the structure of the building, and so you would see these National Park Service guys cutting the lawn, making sure the rose garden looked beautiful, making repairs to the White House, painting occasionally. I think some people forget that's a national park.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that either. So how about the weight of history on you as being the official photographer, and you're capturing these moments for history? I mean, do you think about that? Is there pressure in that, or is it you just get used to it and it doesn't really?
Yeah, I mean, I think the weight of the history was on the President of the United States.
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah, and compared to the decisions that he had to make, my job was a little easier. There were times when you did realize what you were doing was you could feel the history taking place and that you were a part of it. And I liked that. I liked knowing that the pictures that I was making every day were going to be saved in the National Archives in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Hopefully, as long as our country survives, that people will be able to look at these pictures in 50 years, 500 years,
Right.
1,000 years if we're still
Wow.
around.
Do you have a favorite photograph that's in the book, or maybe another photo that didn't make it in the book yet? Or I don't know if there's something that, and maybe whether it's the image itself or what was going on at the time in your life that made it a favorite.
Yeah, no, I don't really have any. I always strive to create a really good body of work. And I used to say, when somebody asked me that question when I was in the White House, I'd always say, well, my favorite picture is going to be the one I make tomorrow. Because that's sort of like what,
That's true.
keeps you going. Of course, I'm no longer there, so it's like I can't say that anymore. But it's hard for me to choose any
Right.
single photo and say this is my favorite one, because I have a few favorites, but they change all the time.
Well, they're just beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
thanks.
just a beautiful book. And speaking of how beautiful the book is, I mean, the quality of the book, the paper, everything about it is just incredible. And did you have high standards for this, or the publisher?
Yeah. I mean, that was the my overriding concern in choosing a publisher was that they were going to do the kind of book that I wanted, which was pretty much the book you see. And I insisted on approval of the designer and consultation on the printer, the size of the book, and the type of printing. So all those things were part of the discussion before I agreed on a publisher.
Wow.
It's as good as I hoped it would be. So I feel proud at what we were able to put together.
It's beautiful. I was going to ask you, when you were talking about the rapport you had with the president, both of you were professors. You were at Ohio University, and he was at the University of Chicago.
Yeah, but he was a law professor.
Yes, he was a law professor, but both of you worked with young people,
Yeah.
and you taught. And was that something that ever came up that you talked about?
It's
your
funny you say that,
interest
because
in
I don't know that ever came up.
Really?
Yeah. I never equated being a photojournalism professor with being a law professor.
Wow.
It's kind of two,
Different
different sides of the
Yes,
brain, different
yes,
sides of the brain, though.
But sharing your talents with others.
Yeah.
And you also were, you've been a photographer for other places as well, of course, National Geographic, for instance. So can you talk about the technique of nature photography and how that is different or the same, or?
I didn't really do nature photography for National Geographic. I did like I think 3 assignments for them, and they were more photojournalistic oriented. Of course, you're the color and light and it is important when you're photographing for National Geographic, but it wasn't like I was doing nature photography per se.
And these pictures, because they're so, it's called Obama an Intimate Portrait, and some of them are just so touching and tender. And how do you make yourself not intrusive and capture these just natural images and things that happen during the day, especially with Sasha and Malia?
Well, I mean, I think that I had this intuitive sense on how to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why he hired me, because he could see that that's the way I operated, even when I was with the Tribune, photographing him for the Tribune. It's hard to explain, other than I just had a knack of not being intrusive, not using a loud camera, not using flash or motor drive. Just trying to be as much a fly on the wall as possible.
And now you're an Instagram star as well. So tell me about that, that development in your life.
I started an Instagram account at the White House. It was like either late 2011 or 2012. And I was posting, at first I was just posting photos with my iPhone, just that were, away from like the main action. Like I wasn't posting, pictures of him in the Situation Room and on iPhone. It was more like, Bo was sitting in the Rose Garden, I'd go out and take a quick picture of Bo, or, just there'd be, a cool picture of the presidential seal, or, just kind of little snippets, kind of away from the action. And then, eventually started including pictures that I had taken with my regular camera too. So the more weighty, moment kind of pictures. And, I developed a pretty good following. And then on January 20, the account became archived, by the National Archives, so it was locked. And I started my personal account on January 20th, and posted a couple of pictures taken afternoon, because my time ended at noon on January 20th. So I had one picture that I posted of him on the helicopter flying over the White House. I posted that on Instagram, and I think I just said like farewell, and it got this like immediate reaction with hundreds of comments, and it appeared online, and I was like, oh, I guess So I don't know. The next couple weeks, I occasionally would post like some what people call throwback photos of him, and was more liberal in what the words I used to accompany the photographs, because when I was at the White House, it was just a straight caption. Sure. But now that I was a private citizen, I could kind of say whatever I wanted. And so people started writing stories that I was shading the current president. And I actually had to look that up because I didn't really know what that meant. And so, I've just been continuing occasionally to post photos of from the Obama administration, and people seem to like what I'm doing.
So how many followers do you have?
I think I have like 1.6 million, which is kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
And it's fun. It's been the interesting thing about the book tour is that I get to meet a lot of these people that follow me, and they're real people. It's and when you're sitting at home and you're on your iPhone, it's easy to like write a comment and
send it out.
Right. But like to see the reaction from
real people,
they're excited to meet me, and it's sort of like I forget that there is a lot of people that like to pay attention to what I'm doing, if you will.
It sounds like fun.
I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, I bet. And so what other things do you do for fun?
Well, this year have not done as many fun things as I would like, because I had to scramble to get this book done in time. So I spent most of the year working on the book. But I'm a big music fan. I did take a vacation in February with my wife. We went on a music cruise, which was a lot of fun.
Nice.
I'd never been on a cruise before. And it was just music all day and night, with a couple of stops in port and some warm places, which was nice.
That's good.
Yeah. So
That sounds like fun. Yes, because I know you're a baseball fan and a Springsteen fan,
Yeah.
I've heard. And I noticed that their pictures, I mean, you've got the Cubs, which are you a Red Sox fan?
I'm a Red Sox fan, and unfortunately, they did not win the World Series.
No, but
Although they did.
You have the picture with the
No,
Cubs.
they did win the World Series in 2013, so
Well,
they
of
did
course
come
they
to the
did.
White House
Yes.
then, and I photographed that. But in terms of the Obamas, it was more appropriate to include a picture of the Cubs.
Well,
and
since you're
especially
in Chicago,
and
we're
Michelle
happy with
had a big connection with her dad because of the Cubs.
Right.
And so the picture in the book is actually of Michelle talking to the team. The president's there, but it's kind of a nice moment when she was talking about what the Cubs meant to her growing up and her dad. So.
On behalf of Cubs fans, thank you for taking that one, including that in the book. And then you also have a picture of Springsteen in there, and Prince, and Paul McCartney, and so that's kind of nice that you can include so many images of different parts of the life there. So tell me about when you were with the Chicago Tribune. Now that was you were stationed, or you were
I was based in
assigned to DC.
So I worked there from 1998 to 2007, and then that's when I went. In 2007 is when I started teaching at Ohio University. So I'd covered Senator Obama in 05, 06, the start of his presidential campaign in 07, and then I left the Tribune to start teaching. And I would see him occasionally on the campaign trail if he was in Ohio, or I went to the convention. I went election night to Chicago as a freelancer, and so I sort of kept in touch with him and his people. And then it was funny because it was the Sunday night in January, I think it was January 4th, before classes for the winter quarter were supposed to begin. They were going to begin on Monday. So I was supposed to start teaching class on Monday. And I got the call on a Sunday night. So I actually went into the school the next morning and resigned, which was
They had to scramble.
which was how the quarter started. I sort of had a heads up that this might happen, so I had let them know that this was a possibility. But they did have to scramble to have somebody to teach my classes.
Right. Can you just tell us a little bit about the kids' book that's about to be made available?
Yeah, so it's called a Young Readers Edition. It's a smaller book. It includes more pictures of kids, but not all pictures of kids. And I have 6 sections in the book. The main book is done chronologically, so you sort of get the full breadth of the presidency from start to finish. And you see the emotions, the ups and downs throughout his presidency. Whereas the Young Readers Edition is more thematic. And I chose what I thought were 6 important things in his life. Family, being kind and respectful, things like that. And so each section, the pictures relate to those themes. And I think people will like it. I think it'll be a good book for young readers, 9, 10, 11, something like that. And then maybe some of those will also, look at their parents' book, the big book. Already I'm getting pictures. People are sending me pictures of them going over the big book with little kids, and it just sort of like warms my heart to see that.
The photographs are so inspiring and so stirring. I mean, you can cry, you can laugh for different images, and they tell stories just looking at the one image. It's just incredible. I'm so glad that you put this book together and it's made available to everyone now.
Yeah.
So thank you, Pete, for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for viewing Authors Revealed. We'll see you next time.